Okay, now, we spoke about it a few weeks ago and we were talking about different forms of modelling, and we were talking about resin models, garage kits, limited run, things like that. Now in the past we've covered limited run kits. They tend to be your sort of standard styrene kit, a little bit rough around the edges, shall we say, and they tend to be lacking in things like locating tabs, things like that. But what they do make up on, what you do tend to find is the styrene makes up the bulk, and then they come along and they'll give you in the kit things like photo etch, resin parts, which gives you the detail that is lacking from the styrene. So really the outward shell, things like that, and you move through. Being a limited run kit, you do tend to pay a little bit more for them. They do tend to be something not mainstream and that is perhaps not available in styrene in that particular scale or something else like that. And then obviously you get garage kits, or we call them, or in the UK, garage kits. The thing with garage kits is, it is what it says. It is made in someone's garage. So you do have to allow for that there will be some quirks, okay? There will be some fit issues. There is going to be, if you're using resin, which 99% of them are, you are going to get air bubbles, things like that, where you don't have this perhaps on more professional line with resin kits that are available through big manufacturers, but then you pay big money. These tend to be life works from some guys who spend their entire time making and upgrading and improving on a certain subject. So perhaps, in this case it's like the X Wing. In other cases recently we've been working on things like Star Destroyers and Star Wars based, but anything for sort of sci-fi, which the mainstream modelers or model companies should say don't do, because of there's probably not enough sales available of them. So if you do want a 3-foot Star Destroyer like we've been working on recently, you are going to have to either find something done back in the day, or a garage kit of it, or a garage kit that's available where somebody has spent a lot of time, a lot of money perfecting a type of kit. But as you said, you are going to pay through the nose, and costs vary, anything from $100 to $600 for these types of kits. Sometimes they'll go even higher depending obviously on the scale, the sizing of them. But if you do want something like, as I'm going to show you here, a studio scale X-Wing fighter, the only way you're going to do this is to be able to do it in resin. Now over the years there's been various manufacturers of them around. This is Scott Alexander kit. He was a master modeler, very well respected in the community and everything else like that. And to get a hold of his kits are an absolute joy, because they tend to be of a certain standard, shall we say. And that's the thing with garage kits. Standards vary, because you can get a guy who's literally making them in his back room to companies who've got like industrial units and they're making them there and things like that. And obviously you've got the quality of the guy who is actually doing it. Now, is this a guy who just does it as a hobby, who hasn't been doing it very long, but he's got an idea of what he wants? Then you can say it's going to be a little bit basic and you can add your details to it. Or do you go for something with a guy who maybe have a film and prop making background, who's now developed his own company and moved on with it and doing something along those scales? So I think what I'm trying to get over here, when you open the box, it could be anything. Unless you know that manufacturer and you know their work and you know what you're looking for and what you're going to get, do your research first. Pop on the internet. Google is your friend, okay? Google them, see what other people, chances are somebody's built it, okay? And there's probably going to be a forum around somewhere in the world where somebody's actually built that particular kit, and you can have a look at it and see if you want to invest that amount of time and money. Because as we know, working on the Star Destroyer recently, I've spent over a month solid on that particular kit, and it's not even in paint yet, purely because it's got so many problems that I've had to overcome. We've taken a kit and cut the hell out of it. I've removed probably a couple of pounds of resin out of it for one, and put it together in a way I feel is better than the kit puts it together, certainly. And that's what you have to expect when you're doing this one. So what I'm going to do is show you this particular one, but this is a kit I've been had here, and really it gives you an idea of what you can actually expect from a garage kit. So basically, this particular one, say, let's get the Scott Alexander. It's a studio scale T65 X Wing from Star Wars. Okay, so in the box Now, I have had this open once before because we've seen it. You're normally going to get some form of instructions. Now, this can be in the form of printed, it may be on a CD, they may give you a link to a video build of it or something else like that, certainly. What you will get 99% of the time, or 100% from I've been doing these, is fantastic backup from the manufacturer. So if you open up your parts and suddenly you find that this bit's a bit wrong, it's got a warp, a massive air hole in it, it's just not right, contact the guy who's made it. The chances are, in every single case I've done this, I've had a replacement sent. You know, they send you a replacement part and a big apology and everything else like that. But you are gonna have to expect to get something like that. Now, normally these are all completely separately packed. So what I'm going to do differently, I'm going to get all the parts out, lay them out, and we can have a look at them, and you can look at different qualities and various things from it. Then we'll go through the instructions and you can see what it is. So to start with, if we just pop this over here, we'll start off with them first. What you got here is very, very large parts. Now, this is obviously the belly of the X Wing. Now, usual things to look out for. The scribing or the panel line detail is pretty faded, okay? So it's giving you the outline of what you need to do. And the great thing is, what I tend to do is when I start off, I'll rescribe everything. So all the panel lines are the same depth, the same sharpness, and everything else as you go along. You might also find that some of the details are a little bit softer than you want. So for instance, these plates running down here, you might think they're a little bit soft, I want to sharpen them up a bit, sand them completely off and replace them with plastic card or photo etch or whatever you want to do to liven it up. But these are the types of things you're going to have to expect on this. Now, this is a pretty good one, to be honest. What we've actually got in here is something with not many air bubbles in it, but what you can expect when you're dealing with resin, especially of this scale, is the odd little air bubble in there. Remember, filler, just go through and do the motions, and we'll talk about it in a moment. So there we go, that's the bottom. This is the top, and there's a couple of separate parts in here. I'll just flip these out a second, and we'll talk about them in a minute. This is the top, okay, so actually, as you can see, you've got nice recessed panel line detailing on, a little bit flashy, a little bit grubby around the front. Again, it's the great thing with resin, it's very easy to work with. You can sand it, you can take care of it as you go through. A little bit off the end, we've got a couple of air bubbles, but luckily they're nowhere where we're going to worry about. Obviously the cockpit, you can see here's a little bit rough, it needs just to be sanded out, but as you'll see in a moment, you've got a tub that fits in on top. But usual thing is, it's just that little, it's been pulled from a mould, and that's it. Some guys will take the time, they'll clean it all up for you before they'll send it. Other guys will send it to you in the raw form. This one's had a little bit of cleanup because obviously you can see on the end here it's been cut, sanded, flush and everything else, probably the plug from the mould where it came from. So there we go, that's those two. And then whilst we got them here, we got the cockpit. So as you can see, the detail, it's all there, it's just a little bit ropey. We might be able to see these instruments down in here. They are just a little bit, well, as you can see, one of them's completely gone over. There's a few bubbles in there. There's a little bit sort of scaling and things like that. And when you sit this guy just in here like this, you can see you've got a margin of error around the outside, which you need to be sanded and filled and put in correctly and everything else like that. But generally, the detail is there as a start. Now, again, if you're doing a project like this, and being studio scale, it's so big, what I would do, to be honest, is completely redo the cockpit. I'd use this as the basics, and then I might decide that I'll do plastic card. So if you're making small circles of it, you can use a punch set, something like this, put your plastic card in, give it a knot, perfect circles, you can then redo them. The same obviously if you're doing squares, stuff like that. And then, you know, are you going to light it? Are you going to put LED lights into this one? A lot of people do, I know. There's plenty of room, that's a nice thing for it, and going through. But as you can see, we've got a few little air bubbles underneath, all right, so they're going to need to be sort of taken care of and things like that if they're on the surface. But being underneath, you're not going to worry about it. But you know, it is that level that you're looking at. So again, here we've got the spine area. This is where your little R2 unit would fit in the back here, and it goes in just like this. Again, some of the details you might think that's fantastic, I'm going to leave it. Okay, other things you might think, well, I think I can do that better, so I might do it photo etch. This is the point to it, you're just going to take your time. The great thing about these things is some of the parts you can look at and you think, I know where that's from, from different kits and things like that. But as you said, that would sit in the back there like that. And then you've got these two go together. Okay, and this gives you an idea of the scale of how big this is going to be. And remember, these two halves don't actually go totally together. Okay, there is going to be a slight difference to them. But again, if we pop these parts out, excuse the helicopter, you might be able to see, if we hold the backs together and you see the front, we've got quite a gap there. If I push them together, you can see. So that's the other thing, you're not going to get perfect joints. Being resin though, as we found out at the Star Destroyer, trust me, if you want to see a lesson in working with resin, go and watch that video. You need to expect these things to be done, but the big thing is you want to know which one's wrong, if it's the top or the bottom. So you need to sort of, you know, place them out. These are flat, both of them, like this. Actually, it's the top one that's slightly off, it's got a slight warp on it, but making sure you're all totally square as you go through. Okay, so let's just pop those two on the top. Okay, so we've got here, this is the end plate that goes onto the back of it, and as you can see, very nice detail. Couple of little air holes in there again. As you can see, you've got lots of them on the top here, but luckily all the ones in here are pretty good. But this is the guy that sort of, you know, comes in on the back here. So that way up, there it is. That's going to fit in the back just like this. Okay, and away you go through. But it's giving you an idea of the size of how big this thing's going to be. Then we've got down here, this is a nice little touch. One of the big things with resin is that over time it can sag and warp, and what's lovely with this particular one, which are hollow, is these have got a core of rod in there. Now this will stop it sort of sagging and everything else. So as you can see, we've got a little bit of a seam line from the mold going down there. You're going to need a little bit of work to polish them up, but what this will stop, one, it makes a nice secure joint when it gets put onto the rest of the laser cannon, okay, and secondly, it will stop it from actually physically sagging over time. And things like a small core of resin like that over time is going to go bleh, okay. So we've obviously got 4 of those. All right, and then if we just make our way through, this is the nose plug for the X-Wing. Okay, so obviously this guy is the one that fits on the end just like this. So this gives you your idea of how big this one is. So from a centimetre apart from nose to the back end, okay, it's going to be 50 centimetres. So it is going to be quite large. And don't forget, the X-Wing, by the time it's got its X-Wing on it, it does take up quite a bit of room. Okay, so down in here, we have one of the engine type details, and as you can see, we've got a nice detail on this, okay, with the resin and everything else. So this is our nice intake as we're looking down into it like that. So again, you could detail up on the inside. That's what you're going to do with these, okay. But this is the point I'm trying to get over this. This is where you make your start, okay. This is where you're going to turn around and say to yourself, right, okay, this is my basic, I've now got a whacking great X-Wing fighter, okay, and then I can go around and super detail it. So this is part of the wing section. So you see we've got the engine down here on the inside, a little bit off the butts, and this is where it's all going to sort of fit together with getting those the wings in the right configuration and everything else. So we've got a few of those. I won't bother getting all of those out. There's another one there as well. So then down in here, we can see this is our center of the X-Wing system, I do believe, which is going to go something like this. Okay, so we've got 2 very nice systems there. Okay, and you've got a small little tiny crack running through that one. Okay, so that's not a problem. Simple filler job, and you're good to go on that one. Okay, so it's quite nice these all being taped up. So let's just untake this guy. See what we got in here. Okay, now obviously we've got 4 of these, because these will be our engines for the rear. Okay, and these should, that's it. So actually what you've got is a tiny little bit of flash going on inside these end nozzles, okay, which do look surprisingly something like a phantom nozzle. Okay, and then obviously in the middle there, but these are for our engines, which then obviously going to come along, and you will something along the lines of click onto the back of these when it's on the back of the wing and everything else, and coming forward. But again, very nice detail. But what you could do is say, right, okay, well I can see where the wiring and the line detail is and everything for this particular one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace it with lead wire, something else like that, which is what we did, if you remember, with the intruder build. So you can take little bits of your modelling you've done from everywhere, okay, and then come along and say, well look, we did something on the intruder, we upgraded that engine and made it look so much better by replacing all the moulded in wiring with real wiring, okay. You can do exactly the same with these. And that's the beauty over this. And this is the point I'm trying to make with this. These are just those intakes again. That you take all your modelling skill that you've had and developed all over the years, and you can put them to practice in so many different ways on here. So what we've actually got here is one of the wings, okay, from the X-Wing itself. So we've got some detail from the inside and then on the outside as well, because then obviously I've got to remember if we've got the right one round here. These go on here, something like this. To get them all in and everything else is lining up correctly. But that's it, they'll go in. But as you can see, you've got quite nice joins, you've got no massive huge steps and gaps and everything else to deal with these. They do go in quite nicely, and you've got details obviously running down in places perhaps you haven't noticed, which I hadn't, okay, as it works all its way in there, just like that. So we've got multiples of those, and then we've got a nice box of goodies in here, which in here we have the laser cannons. So obviously a multi-part setup. We have 4 of these in here, okay, because obviously these are the guys which are going to go onto this area, I do believe, once it's all cleaned up and everything, for our laser guns coming off of the X-Wing as we make its way around there. And then obviously we've got loads of little parts in here. So we've got this little one, which is, I presume, the rear guy. When it's all cleaned up and done, that will fit into the back here, just like that. But you can see, when you first get it out of the box, you're thinking, not much detail here, but it's all these little areas. So as you can see here, we've actually got all these small parts that are going to go on to detail everything up. And then just down in here, we have the intakes, okay, which are going to go on with these guys, I do believe, as they're going in one way or t'other, okay. We have our pilot, which if we just tip these out, we can go through what we've got here. So again, we have those intakes. Let's move those 4 out of the way. Okay, more smaller details. That'll be the belly. Got 4 of these. There we go. All the way through. Again, flashy but practical. Not going to be a problem to take care of those. So we've got 4 of the little engines tops to go on. We should have 4 of these. This is for the wing fold set. And going through, so we have 4 of those. We have our little R2 unit, which is a little bit crude, but as I say, you could simply live him up. But when he is having a good day, he'll then fit into your unit just like this when he's all cleaned up, and he'll be sat in there just like that. And then we have Luke here, or anybody else as you want to do. Quite a nice, obviously he's a bit flashy, I can't put him together at the moment, but you can see his head would go on. But you do have a X-Wing pilot just like that. Again, usual thing, you'll need to sand him and clean him up to get him in, but he will sit into your fake base as you put it down in here, so you have to build a base for him to fit in, otherwise he's going to drop through, okay? But the idea is he will be sitting something like that, okay? Into your little X-Wing. So as I said, in here, these are all the parts for the laser cannons. Again, 4 of those all going through separate parts. So I know some people queried about the cost of something like this. Actually, when you get it all out, it's actually not too bad. And this thing is going to cost you around about sort of $400, okay, for something like this. This one was delivered to me for $440, so I think they're going to be around about sort of $350, $300. But the thing is, you know, it is someone's life work. You do have the full backup of the guy who's put this thing together and going right the way through. So for instance, what have I done with the instructions? As you can see, you've got quite a lot of resin here, quite a lot of weight. And then your instructions, as I said, to be honest, it depends on who's doing this. It's very hit and miss. But as you can see, it talks you through all the areas, how it goes together. It talks about some little tips and tricks of how to get it all together with no problems. And as you can see, this is that back area going on. Okay, it's talking about the wings. Obviously it used to have the old one and the new ones, where it's been upgraded, how to put it together, where it should join up and everything else. Okay, going right the way through. There's the top half of those nozzles when we've got the engine wings together. Those engines taking shape, going through the back and everything else. So there we go. That is what I would call a good kit. Okay, it's got plenty of scope for upgrading it, and that's the point to this. So you can turn around to yourself and, as I say, have a look on the old interweb and literally have a look around, just Google it, studio scale models. There's plenty of forums out there, some of them you pay for, some of them are free, okay, and they will talk about obviously where guys have done these, upgraded them, so especially things like adding lighting to them, sound effects, things like that, putting them onto stands so they can stand up and be fantastic. And this is one nice touch with this back plate, because what you could do is put a pole through here and have it on a mount from the rear, which means it looks great, okay? And then once you want to have it off of the mount, you can just have a plug unit and you pop this in, okay? And that's actually what it's for, okay? So for mounting this one, it's absolutely fantastic. A couple of things to talk about. Resin, obviously health and safety. This stuff is horrible stuff to work with, as I've been knowing with the Star Destroyer. Always wear a mask when you're sanding it. Try and do it outside, or if not, have a hoover running, something where it sucks up the dust and traps it in it. There's no point sucking it up and blowing it around somewhere else, okay? So make sure it's got a good filter on it. And then usual things. Over time, resin does sag. So, like these guys have got bars in. Our Star Destroyer, that's fully reinforced now because I don't want it sagging in 30-40 years time and ending up like a mess. So hopefully that'll be fine. But if you can reinforce where you think it's going to go down, I don't think the nose on this is going to sag, but I think the wings might. So you might think to yourself, okay, well, you know, how hard would it to be is to put something like a brass rod through it. Okay, so you could channel, put it down, sand and fill on top, which I think would be a nice touch with these and stop these sagging, because I can imagine something like that with quite a lot of weight hanging on the end of it could end up going south, all right? Or if you display them, put them on their bum so the weight is distributed and not pulling on them. But there we go, that's it. That's garage kits or garage kits. Little things, actually it's quite a nice touch here. You might see on this one we've got like a seam running down here. Actually it's a pour mould, but the thing is, you can see you've got cracks on both sides. Where's my little gears? If I just zoom you down here, I can show you. Little things to expect, but don't worry too much about them, okay? Is, hopefully you can see we've got this crack running over the top, okay? And on the other side, you catch it in the light. You can see it's like an over area. So it's quite hard to see it in the light. It's better with the naked eye. But again, you just sand, take care of it, perhaps a little bit of filler, but resin's great. It's so easy to work with. It's very soft, you can sand it. And then obviously invest in something like a little mini drill, okay? Because these guys, like I've got in the end here, you might be able to see a little drill bit. To be honest, on the Star Destroyer, I had to do a tiny little bit of cleanup using it like a dentist drill, and you can just zip in there, take care of it, and sand it out. If you're doing that with styrene with plastic, it's not as easy because it melts and makes a mess and everything else. But resin, no problem at all. You can just go in there and clean it up and go around. Like rescribing, it's very easy to rescribe resin. Just take your time with it, don't push, just drag, very nicely moves and everything else like that. Glues, obviously, your standard super glues, you've got your epoxies, things like that, you know, or you can do, which we've been showing recently, is I've been using resin to weld up and join and connect things as well as the super glue, so it's got double strength if you like and everything else like that. I've been finding it's been working really, really well. So there we go, that is resin in all its glory.